Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you for your patience. Just as a reminder, Council did convene the first portion of our Council meeting in closed, and we will report out on the deliberations in closed after our Committee of Adjustment meeting. But we've taken a short recess from our Council meeting. We're going to go into our Committee of Adjustment meeting, and then we'll go back to our Council meeting open portion, and we'll report out on our closed deliberations. So we'll go straight to a Committee of Adjustment, but when we go into our open portion of our Council meeting, I will ask someone to read our land acknowledgement. But for the time being, we will start with our Committee of Adjustment. Thank you to Ms. Wood for being here. I believe that I am calling the meeting to order. Having done that, I'm going to ask for any disclosures of interest from council colleagues. Any disclosures of interest, colleagues? Seeing none, I'll go to approval of minutes. You'll note that the last time we met was June 14th. Can I look for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes from June 14th? Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Thank you, Councillor Barclay.
Sorry, that was August 9th.
I'm sorry?
August 9th was the last meeting.
Oh, August 19th. I am so sorry. I'm reading June 14th, but
yes, that's
okay. Is it June 14th and August 19th?
No, just August 9th.
Okay, so that was just a small error here. Okay,
Correct.
so these are the minutes from August 19th. Thank you. So with that in mind, we've got a mover and a seconder. Any concerns or questions in regards to the minutes from August 19th? My apologies. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Good, thank you. And we'll move directly into the public hearing portion. And Ms. Wood, I'm happy to read the script. It's right here. Of course, this is a legally mandated script that we have to read at the beginning of every public hearing or public meeting. The Committee of Adjustment will now hold a public meeting to consider application number A0923 on the lands located at 2727 Rideau Glen Lane to reduce the minimum required side yard setback from 3 meters to 2.21 meters and to allow a minor increase in lot coverage to permit the redevelopment of an existing single detached dwelling, including the minor addition of an accessibility ramp to the structure. I must advise that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the minor variance application. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at the meeting or written submissions prior to a decision being made, the Ontario Lands Tribunal may refuse to consider any objections. Ms. Wood, Debbie Wood is here as Secretary Treasurer to keep a record summary of the meeting. Are there people here for this public meeting? Is the applicant here for the meeting? Okay, great. Welcome. All right. So with that, we are now looking to Ms. Martin to provide the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So our first variance of this evening is for the property located at 2727 Rideau Glen Lane. Let's go to the next slide. So the property is located on Rideau Glen Lane, as well as it's adjacent to the Rideau River. You can see it outlined in blue on the map provided. We'll go to the next slide. Just an aerial photograph of the property. You can tell by the aerial that the property is already quite, it's a smaller lot, and the property and surrounding uses are similar in that you have existing residential within the area. Next slide, please. So the official plan designates the property as flooding hazard, and our zoning bylaw zones the property as flooding, erosion, and protection zone. So the majority of the area that this property and the surrounding properties are located within are within the floodplain hazard of the Rideau River. The property is 0.17 acres in size, and as mentioned, the uses include existing residential, a golf course, and the Rideau River. If we go to the next slide, please. A site plan was provided with the application seeking the relief. So for the redevelopment of the dwelling that's on the property. So the dwelling will be relocated on the property to improve upon the position as to where it's located. In relocating and redeveloping the dwelling, it will push into the interior side yard setback, which has a required setback of 3 meters, and they're proposing a setback of 2.21 meters. I also wanted to note that there will also be a small variance request in regards to the maximum permitted lot coverage in the flooding and erosion protection zone. As noted, there will be a minor addition to accommodate an accessibility ramp into the dwelling, and staff are of the opinion that this is an acceptable increase in lot coverage to accommodate the accessibility ramp. And it is staff's recommendation that council support the variance to reduce the interior side yard setback from 3 meters to 2.21 meters, as well as to permit that small, approximately 1% lot coverage increase to accommodate the accessibility ramp. I also wanted to note that we did not receive any comments in regards to members of the public for the proposed application, and Rideau Valley is involved in regards to the permitting side of the redevelopment of the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Any questions for Ms. Martin, council colleagues? Yes, go ahead, Deputy Mayor, go.
Yeah, if we can just go back to the site plan. I'm just curious about what the 3 concentric squares are at the beginning. Is that septic?
We'll just wait for the slide to
Yeah.
come back up.
It's the second final slide of your presentation. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
Is that the septic?
that is
bed?
correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any other questions, staff? Or council colleagues, rather? I'm quite surprised that the addition of accessibility ramp would require a committee of adjustment. Is it because of the reduction in the side yard setback? Is that what?
Yeah, it is both, Your Worship. So the proposed reestablishment or redevelopment of the single detached dwelling will push into the interior side yard setback, which is required to be 3 meters. So it'll be a 2.21 meter setback, which is approximately 1.8 meters. 0.8 meters in. And then the increase in lot coverage, there's a maximum lot coverage of 15% in the floodplain. Because it's being exceeded, we're just going to formally recognize that exceedance to accommodate that accessibility ramp.
Okay. But and just to the point of an accessibility ramp, shouldn't that be an inherent right for any property owner to build an accessibility ramp?
From a zoning perspective, when we look at structures, we look at the overall footprint of both the building and the accessory structures that allow for access, including decks, into the dwelling unit. Understanding that the floodplain in itself presents some challenges in regards to redevelopment. Typically, if this, on average rural lot, it probably wouldn't have been an issue. But again, the floodplain has more restrictive zonings in regards to maximum lot coverage, just again to reduce impacts in the event of a flood. So that's where we're running into that issue. Where we might typically work in regards to lot coverage would be to look at, especially with the redesign of or reestablishment of a house, to see if we could reconfigure the proposed footprint. But in this case, that wasn't possible, and the request to increase the lot coverage to accommodate that accessibility ramp was made.
Okay. Okay, so I don't see that there's anyone from the public here, is that correct? Apart from the applicant, and does the applicant wish to speak? Do either of you wish to speak, or are you good? Good, okay, thank you. Okay, we'll appreciate that context. Certainly I would hope as we move into the future, things like accessibility ramps aren't necessarily the subject of committee of adjustment meetings. I understand why. I'm just sort of fascinated by that reality, but here we are. So with that in mind, I think we're gonna close the public meeting, and we're going to move the motion that has been presented, or the recommendation rather, in regards to this particular matter. And I'm just calling up the recommendation, colleagues, and that is that the Committee of Adjustment grant relief for the properties located at 2727 Rideau Glen Lane, Concession 1, Lot 27, former Township of Oxford and Rideau, now North Grenville, from the following sections of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 5012. To provide relief from Section 30.2, flooding, erosion, and protection zone provisions to reduce the minimum required side yard setback from 3 meters to 2.21 meters. So with that, I'll look for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Strachan. Okay. Deputy Mayor Barclay, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Good, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck with your modifications. And we appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to go on to Maple Hill Road. And this is that the Committee of Adjustment will now hold a public meeting to consider application number A1023 and the lands located at 914 Maple Hill Road to reduce the minimum required side yard setback from 6 meters to 3 meters to permit an attached garage. I must advise that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed minor variance application. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions at this meeting or written submissions before the committee makes a decision on the proposed variance, the Ontario Lands Tribunal may refuse to consider objections. Debbie Wood is here, as we know. Are there people here for this public meeting? All right, thank you. And are you the applicant or are you here for the public meeting? You're the applicant. Awesome. Okay, welcome. So we're going to refer once again to, is it Ms. Martin for this one? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Your Worship. So our second variance this evening is for the property located at 914 Maple Hill Road. We'll go to the next slide, please. So the property is located just outside of Oxford Station on Maple Hill Road. And we'll go to the next slide. As you can see, there's a consistent development pattern in the area of existing residential units. The property is designated rural, and it has a rural kennel exception 3 zoning on it. So there's some zoning permissions in regards to a potential kennel on the property. The property is 3.9 acres in size, and as mentioned, the surrounding land uses are rural residential. Next slide, please. The applicants are seeking to add an addition for an attached garage and a mudroom onto their existing dwelling, and based on the logistics of their existing dwelling, the proposed location will push into the interior side yard setback with the property that's adjacent and located to the north. In the rural zone, a minimum interior side yard setback of 6 meters is required, and they're proposing to reduce that by 50% down to 3 meters. Next slide, please. Staff did receive a letter of support from the neighbor who they will be pushing in towards the interior side yard setback with. If you look, going back to the aerial imagery, you can tell that the neighbor's lot is well vegetated as well, so there would be a vegetative buffer between the proposed addition and the neighbor's dwelling. However, they had no concerns with the proposed addition. So it is staff's recommendation that the committee support the proposed minor variance to reduce the interior side yard setback from 6 meters to 3 meters.
Okay, thank you. Council colleagues, any questions or concerns in regards to this one? Not seeing any. Is there any member of the public wishing to speak? Not seeing anyone. Does the applicant wish to speak? You're good? All right. So then we will move forward with the recommendation from staff, and that is that the Committee of Adjustment grant relief for the properties located at 914 Maple Hill Road. Now the municipality of North Grenville from the following sections of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 5012, and that is to provide relief from Section 9.2 Rural Zone Provisions to reduce the minimum required side yard setback from 6 meters to 3 meters. So, colleagues, a mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wilson, thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to call the question. I see no dissent here. All in favor? Good. That carries. Thank you for being here. Good luck. And that, I think, concludes our Committee of Adjustment, if I'm not mistaken.
Adjournment?
Adjournment. So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to adjourn the Committee of Adjustment. Councillor Strachan, Councillor Wilson, move in second. We are adjourning Committee of Adjustment at 6:52 p.m. Excellent. So next we'll move on to our council meeting. And switching folders here, I'm looking for a council colleague to read the land acknowledgement, and then I'll report out on closed proceedings. Councillor Strachan.
The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe. We honor the historic relationship of the Haudenosaunee and Huron-Wendat peoples to this land. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship with all Indigenous peoples, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and fostering the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you. Briefly, we met in closed between 5:10 p.m. and 6:15 p.m. And this session, this closed session of council was pursuant to Section 239.2 of the Municipal Act. Decisions to report out to the open session are as follows. Catherine Allwright Castleton was appointed to the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. Councillor Strachan, do I have that name correct from your understanding? Catherine Allwright Castleton. And we have Sasha Hansel was also appointed to the Environmental Action Advisory Committee. We'd like to thank residents in North Grenville for continuing to step up to these committees. They are dynamic, fast-moving committees, and should anyone here wish to join a committee, there are several vacancies, so feel free to let us know if you have an interest. And further, staff was directed to proceed with conditions of draft approval for subdivisions within the municipality of North Grenville. So that concludes our reporting out. For the purposes of tonight's meeting, we're now almost exclusively focusing on planning matters for the most part on Wednesdays. That is our goal. So we're going to quickly skip to our first zoning bylaw amendment. Oh, we have a consent agenda. I apologize. So we do have a quick consent agenda, and that is in regards to the minutes from the Old Town Kemptville BIA meeting of July 24th and the Rideau Valley Conservation Area meeting of July 27th. So council colleagues, that's all that is on our consent agenda. I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of those minutes. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Wilson, thank you. Any comments or questions on those minutes, colleagues? Seeing any, I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Good, thank you. So then we will move then over to planning matters. And we're considering first, council, our staff report in regards to 2509 McGovern Road. So I'm going to proceed with the reading of our public meeting script, which is legally mandated by the province of Ontario. So forgive me. Council will now hold a public meeting to consider zoning bylaw amendments for the following properties: 2509 McGovern Road and Concession 6, part of Lot 12, Geographic Township of South Gore, located in the southwest corner of County Road 24 and Kingdom Road. I must advise you that these meetings are your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed amendments. If an appellant does not provide oral submissions or written ones prior to a council decision, the Ontario Land Tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Following the presentation from staff, council will hear from the applicant, followed by members of the public who wish to comment either for or against. Any persons wishing to address the proposal will ask their questions through the chair. And please be advised that any member of the public who should wish to provide written comment can still do so after a public meeting is adjourned. Council members may also wish to ask questions through the chair to those making presentations. So with that in mind, we are going to ask, is it Mr. Mosher, to present 2509 McGovern Road, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we could have the next slide. So just an overview for this application. It's being made to address some non-compliance issues that had been observed by staff at the property. There was a complaint against the property about the operation of a contractor's yard within the property itself, and this led staff to investigate and attend the property in April of this year. At the time that we attended the property, we discussed with the owner that his compliance options would be to cease the use that he was using it for, or to obtain a zoning amendment to request this use to be added into the property zoning amendments category. So just the only, request being made is to allow for a contractor's yard as an additional permitted use on portions of the property. And a site plan control agreement would be required under the municipality site plan control bylaw for any commercial property. So this would be one of those as well. So this would control things such as the location of parking of vehicles, commercial entrances, screening from residential properties, etc. Next slide, please. The definition from North Grenville zoning bylaw states that it's a place where there is storage in the open of goods and materials, machinery and or equipment normally utilized by the construction industry. Might include the repair of machinery, but it doesn't include noxious uses of materials, and it doesn't include a wrecking yard as defined by the bylaw, nor equipment or materials used for blasting. Next slide, please. So with the application that was submitted, that was the extent of the materials that have been presented to staff for review. Next slide, please. This is the subject property. To the north, you can see that there is a licensed quarry operation, and then To the west, south, and east are scattered rural developments in and around. It's a heavily vegetated area in this part of the municipality, and it's located in Lot 25 in Concession 6. Next slide, please. So this shows it again, the property's highlighted in the blue. What you can see in the sort of the darkish gray areas, those are spots that are identified as woodlands. They're not identified as significant woodlands by North Grenville's official plan, just woodlands. And the area where the contractor's yard is being proposed is already a disturbed area, and through the site plan control agreement, specification could be added in there to operate only within the existing disturbed area, and if there would be any expansion into parts of this grayish area that remain vegetated, that there could be appropriate EIS and studies. To the south of the property, you can see that there's this kind of swampy hatching, and that's south of McGovern Road on those properties. That's a provincially significant wetland, and there is a 120-meter buffer identified as the kind of dark dashed line, and that's just at the southern extent. The proposed location of the contractor's storage yard is not within the 120-meter setback from the provincially significant wetland. So from the provincial policy statement and the perspective of natural heritage, there's no impacts or no negative impacts from the proposed use. Next slide, please. This is the zoning of the property, being rural. Again, you can sort of see the quarries up to the north and generally rural all around, other than the EP wetland zone to the south and that grayish 120-meter buffer that goes around it. Next slide, please. And this would be the location as observed by staff in April when we attended the site with the property owner, where the storage would be. It's important to note that this does show the area is a little bit more heavily vegetated, but when we were there in person in April, this location was already disturbed with vehicles being located within that area. So the application is consistent with the PPS in staff's opinion because it does promote an appropriate use of the rural lands and helps to achieve the vision of building a strong, healthy community by protecting the environment and facilitating economic growth. It does avoid natural heritage features which are south of the property and therefore doesn't propose a negative impact to those features. The development would not preclude or hinder adjacent mineral aggregate operations of the Northern Quarry, and even with the establishment of the contractor's yard, this type of use would not introduce an incompatible use to the adjacent quarry. The proposed location of the contractor's yard is no closer to the quarry operation than more sensitive residential dwellings which are located nearby. Next slide, please. In general, this proposal is consistent with the county's official plan occurring within a rural area, again promoting that diversified opportunity for employment. It wouldn't hinder conservation of biodiversity, and it protects mineral aggregate resources for their long-term use. Next slide, please. In terms of the municipal official plan, the development supports and maintains the historic relationship between rural and urban communities. It's envisioned through our official plan as a limited commercial use within the rural area, and it's appropriate with the surrounding area with the appropriate use of site plan control for buffering and screening, and that would ensure that there's proper blending in with the rural landscape. Next slide, please. So we did receive comments from some external agencies, and they included a letter of no comment from Enbridge Gas, a letter of no comment from the Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, and a letter of no comment from Emergency and Protective Services. Next slide. At the time that this slide deck was prepared and the report package was written, we did receive an email from Mr. Peter Johnson supporting the requested zoning amendment application. To staff's knowledge, to date, no other comments have been received. Next slide, please. So based on the foregoing, it's staff's recommendation that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment to establish this contractor's yard as an additional permitted use at the subject property. I'm happy to answer questions.
Good, thank you for that fulsome presentation. I'll recognize Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Mosher. I'm parked on the slide where it says, first of all, the applicant has to go through a zoning bylaw amendment, and then there's a site plan control. It says appropriate buffering and screening. Can you be more specific? What is required in terms of buffering and screening?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Normally what we would see on an application in the rural area for this type of use is vegetative buffering and screening. As was seen on the One Air photo that showed some of the trees in front, there's already quite a bit of that. Other measures that could be specified include fencing, if required, just to ensure that the vehicles are contained in one specific location. But the primary thing in a rural area is distance from the road. That's going to be the biggest thing that assists with buffering and screening.
But there are no minimum requirements in terms of setback from the road?
Through you, Your Worship, none are being requested, specified, asked for, nor identified by staff. There is minimum distances for landscape buffers through the zoning bylaw that are established. They're quite small, probably in the neighborhood of 1.5 meters. So if council wishes, they could, ask for something that's a little bit greater, and that's certainly within the realm of council to request such. But the standard itself is specified through the existing zoning bylaw.
Excellent. Other questions, colleagues? I'm not seeing any. Does the applicant wish to speak this evening? Okay. Do members of the public wish to speak this evening? If you wish to speak, you'll have to come down and address us at the mic. I apologize. Not really, no. Unfortunately, it has to be captured on the public record. Yeah. Sorry, we apologize. It's not the most convenient. Yeah. Oh, you can sit in there's a mic there. You can sit in the chair. I'm not sure that one is active. I'd have to defer to our AV colleagues. Okay.
Hello.
You're good. So just need a name and an address, please.
Okay, my name is Gabriel Boutet. I live at 2550 McGovern Road.
Okay.
My issue with this property is basically the road. We live on a dirt road, as you guys most likely know. This property, being a trucking business, causes lots of damage on the road, especially on the corner of Irishtown and McGovern Road. The road gets regraded. This year hasn't been as much as previous years, but regardless, the road gets damaged pretty badly, basically forcing traffic coming onto McGovern Road to have to go into oncoming traffic because the road is pretty badly damaged. So I'm just wondering if anything's going to be done about that with the property being a commercial business. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask our planning staff, because we don't have our public works staff with us this evening, if you can just elaborate on how you take into account impact on roads, as obviously some uses of particular properties may change. Mr. Moshe.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, for this one, we did speak with Public Works and asked them if they had any concerns with the proposal as outlined, and they indicated no. The understanding is that there's presently, I think, 3 to 4 trucks being used going up and down the road. They did recommend that through site plan, a commercial entrance would be something that's appropriate just to make sure that vehicles can turn in and out of the property safely. But in terms of vehicular traffic or any other things of that nature, no issues were identified by Public Works. So I'm happy to ask some questions and take them back, but I don't have anything further to add.
Just as a follow-up, because I think part of what you're talking about is just the general condition of the road, right? Independent of, certainly this might exacerbate it, but nonetheless, I think you're talking about road condition generally as a dirt road. And perhaps, Deputy Mayor Barclay, you might have some insight into our asset management of roads, and other council colleagues are welcome to weigh in as well. I don't know where McGovern Road sits on our list of higher priority roads to address.
Yeah, I don't know where it sits either in terms of hard surfacing, but I can tell you from my experience working with Public Works is that all the gravel roads are maintained for or evaluated in terms of quality. We've got staff on the road all the time monitoring it. All you have to do if it gets really bad is to file a traffic concern form or a concern form that you can get right on the front page of the website. That's tracked and it goes into their work plan, and they usually are pretty quick at addressing concerns, especially after rain, etc. I'm sure you're probably, after the wet weather we've had, pretty washboardy in certain places. But yeah, well, the graders will be out and might be out sooner if you, file a field report, as it were, to let them know what the condition is.
Communication can be helpful in this matter. Anything else?
Sorry. The other thing is just sometimes the speed of the vehicles are a little excessive. And on that corner, there are kids that live there, which is just a little bit of a concern, especially having to go onto oncoming traffic. We just wouldn't want anything bad to happen. Yeah.
And that corner is McGovern and, remind me?
Irishtown.
Irishtown,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, that's certainly helpful. I guess again, without our public works staff here tonight, do you feel like the sight lines are fairly okay in that area right now?
You mean like visibility
Yes,
wise?
yes.
I mean, turning onto McGovern Road, it's not the best.
Okay,
You do have to peek out a little bit.
right,
But
right.
apart from that, it's okay. yeah.
Okay. Just wonder, Deputy Mayor, if we can direct public works staff to make sure that the sight lines are, right, obviously as good as they can be. So from a visibility perspective, no one's trying to, right, kind of cut a corner, if you will, without an adequate sort of vantage point of all sides. Because kids aren't watching for trucks or cars, right?
That's exactly
Not by long shots. So we need to be sure that we're vigilant, and we have fielded other complaints where visibility and sightlines were an issue, and we do cut back the brush. So perhaps we can take note of that tonight, Phil and Amy, to make sure that we address that for sure. And I guess McGovern is 80, is it 80-kilometer road? It's unposted 80?
There's no posted speed limit.
Right, so it's de facto 80.
Yeah, either on Irishtown or McGovern, there's no
Right.
posted speed limit.
Okay, okay. So, should anyone feel like a road assessment is required for any road, rural or urban, in the municipality, one can be requested, and certainly perhaps that should be given some consideration, given the sort of the change of use, not just for the property in question, but just generally rural roads in North Granville seem to be getting busier, so they're not slowing down by a long shot. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, just to follow your comments, Madam Mayor, you have some neighbors that are very strong advocates for maintaining the quality of the road and the plowing during the winter time. So I'm sure you've spoken to some of them, and we hear from them very often.
That's good.
Okay.
Well, without communication, nothing really happens, so appreciate you being here tonight. Thanks for your
Thank you.
comments, and we'll definitely try to get to those sight lines. All right. Okay, any other comments? Okay, you are the applicant. You'll have to come down, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's the only way. All right. And just for the record, we know who you are, but if you could just say your name. Yeah, hi, Kevin. Oh, there you go. Now you're good, Kevin.
Kevin Scott, owner of the property at 2509. I just wanted to kind of clarify some terminology, because what I don't run is a trucking company. We run a truck rental business. I leave in the morning at between 6 and 7 a.m., one trip out with 3 trucks, and in the time frame of 5 p.m. till 6:30 p.m., that one truck, 3 trucks return, 2 trips a day per truck, 6 total trips. Prior to my arrival there, as Deputy Mayor just alluded to, that road has been very vocal about the condition of the road, summer and winter, and I know that from my neighbor across the road. So going to that concern, I agree with that concern of my neighbors. That corner is bad, but it is has not been impacted negatively by my 6 trips around that corner. It'll be bad in a week, whether I drive on that road or my trucks are parked. That 90-degree corner goes washboard immediately. I also want to say that when I moved there, I took tremendous pride in owning this property and rejuvenating it to a state of looking like the owner had pride in this property. You know, my neighbors to the east of my house, everybody has a ditch mowed. Mine was scrubbed right past into the township ditch. I took my equipment and my expense, and we spent a week clearing not even half of my road frontage, and we gained it back to grass and planted grass and widened my driveway quite substantially to allow for turn radius. I'm trying to be, and have been, as respectable of a neighbor as I can be, knowing what I brought to the neighborhood. I'm the hardest person on my own drivers that they'll have in the day, because if they make a noise that disturbs me, they hear about it immediately. Like in the morning or in the night, if they're doing something that's disrupted me, I can assure that my neighbors heard it too. So I have great respect for that from a noise side of things. And like I say, it's a matter of like a dump truck backs in, he may want to clean out some mud in the back of a truck, he backs up and bangs the tailgate. I don't allow that. If they do it, they get told immediately that's the last time and that's it. So I really do respect the neighborhood, and I really don't feel like we have a negative impact on the road as expressed by the roads committee. They know full well what I have there, so they would be the first critics of it for sure. I mean, that's all I would really wanted to clarify, is that, you know, I run a respectable heavy equipment rental company. We don't store material there. I'm not loading and unloading and transferring product. It's, you know, simply a parking lot, really. My plumbing and HVAC, my home construction business, those vehicles are at the employee's home. The material I store on site is in my shop, like and really the visual screen there at my property, there'd be cars parked for the day, employees to drivers. You can't see those from the road. Like, the bush is thicker than from here to the screen, and it's dense, big, overgrown Scotch pines, it's undergrowth. The screening, unless you're driving west and look in, you can't see it. If you see it, it's heading, west and look in over your shoulder. If you're heading east, you have to look for it. And I really deliberately did that. I don't want to see the mess from the road. There is no mess, but I don't want to see it from the road either. I want people to not have my property as a concern on their mind. So really, that's all I wanted to say, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kevin. Colleagues, any questions for Mr. Scott? No? Okay, thank you. Okay. Any further comment from members of the public? Okay. All right, thank you. Maybe now that we have a roving mic, our fabulous AV team, I guess we could start passing it around, eh? Why people don't have to come down. Okay. All right. Well, we're not used to this additional mic, so we're more accustomed to compelling people to the front, but maybe we can change that practice. Just welcome. Name and address, please. Oh, and if you can just press the button. Yeah, there you go.
He's concerned about the noise in the area. It's been 2 years he's been running that place, I guess. It's not, it's around 2 years, right? Yeah, it's 2 years. We've been hearing a lot of noise. We have two quarries behind our yard, and it's been noise like 24/7 sometimes. Like, there's so much of noise, and then we have additional, him having a, what do they call that? I'm not a good speaker, sorry. He's going to bring heavy vehicle, which makes so much of noise. We have our neighbors, most of the houses have been sold down there. And when I pass by, it's so bad that noise can be here until in the weekends. And after the quarry stops, they start banging sound of the trucks that we hear all the time. So we have concern about that noise. So that's all.
Thank you. So maybe I can just quickly ask planning staff, in terms of noise considerations, obviously rural properties with multiple uses, can you just sort of elaborate on your considerations?
Thank you, Your Worship. For this application, what was being discussed and proposed was the screening and buffering. That's the primary things to mitigate. No additional measures were proposed. There is the noise bylaw in effect in the municipality, and that would be the thing that we default to.
And certainly we can direct any resident to contact our bylaw team in regards to noise, should there be a concern, not just with this property, but any property. Okay. Thank you. Are there other members of the public wishing to speak? Okay, thank you. And just name and address, please. Thank you, just for the record.
Good evening. Matt McKay, Lot 25, Concession 6, 2589. We're on the corner of Irishtown and McGovern. So, first off, I want to say that I'm pro-economic development in the township, and I know that the property is actually employing a lot of friends and neighbors. Good things. But I do have two questions. Having just been informed that this was happening by a neighbor, we did not receive any documentation in the mail from the township that there was going to be an amendment, but one of our neighbors actually put it in our mailbox yesterday. So the questions are, the quarries that exist behind us, we fought, we lost. But there were concessions made. One of the concessions being that no truck traffic was going to be allowed on McGovern Road. All truck traffic from the quarries had to exit out to Beach Road. Only trucks that were for the township could travel down McGovern, limiting the noise and the impact on the road. I suppose my question is, does he not have to follow these same rules? Or is there going to be an omission for that? I don't know. Question number two is, having just been informed that there was a request to change his zoning, is there any further ambitions for the property? He has a home building division, a trucking division, and a plumbing division. All good things. What else is on the back burner? What else is planned for this property? And do we have any recourse to be informed in advance that there's going to be more changes? Traffic is traffic. My wife is very concerned about the traffic. I don't want to comment on the trucks. I think it's, well, I'll leave it at that. So those are two questions.
Sure, okay. So maybe planning staff can speak to notification provisions and how neighboring properties were notified, and then the contemplation around truck traffic on McGovern specifically. We'll start there.
Sure. Thank you for your questions. Through you, Your Worship. I think you indicated you're at 2589.
Correct.
Which is the corner of Irishtown and McGovern. Correct. So that's 280 meters from the subject property, and the Planning Act requires that notification be given to neighbors within 120 meters of a subject property. So that's why you wouldn't have received the direct service through the mail. But a notice was also posted at the property as required under the Planning Act. So I can assure that proper notification was given under the Planning Act. And then in regards to the question on truck traffic resulting from a previous decision on the quarry, can you potentially speak to that? Unfortunately, I'm not aware of any of the specifics that went into the location or ultimate routes for trucks from that quarry. So I don't have that information, but I'm happy to follow up. And just to take that one step further, so the provisions, as you understand, to eliminate quarry truck traffic on McGovern were specific to the quarry?
That's correct. You know, okay. When the decision was made to allow the quarries,
right,
there were stipulations on pollution, noise, and truck traffic. I guess one of the concerns is that the second quarry that's positioned right beside the primary was limited to 2 years to use the gate onto Irishtown Road. We're now 20 years in, right, and they're still using that gate. And no matter what we do, our contests go unabated or unheard. And so the worry is that if everything is allowed to happen and no questions are asked, then, you know, on your own as be.
Okay. Duly noted. So it sounds like we have a little bit of homework to do, colleagues. Certainly to just understand truck-related patterns resulting from the quarry in this instance.
Certainly the quarry.
Yes.
I mean, that's another issue though, isn't it?
Indeed, yes. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Mr. McKay?
McKay.
Is that McKay, sorry. So your understanding is that the restrictions put on the quarry, it was to trucks, quarry trucks, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All quarry traffic was to
Yeah.
go
Okay.
out towards beach.
And are they
Ultimately,
abiding?
yes. Yes, they
are.
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then you also mentioned that the only traffic allowed would be municipal trucks, like snow plows and graders.
Well,
and stuff.
and, when the road needs maintenance or, if they have to access Rock Road, then they can do it on McGovern if they want to.
Yeah. So that would preclude any other kind of heavy trucks on the road? Is that your understanding?
Well, that's the question.
Oh.
So there is a lot of traffic on McGovern Road, twice as much in the last 5 years, 100% more than
no.
there was initially. We've been there a long time.
Yeah, I guess my question, and not for you, is whether we need to defer and look at whatever agreement the municipality had with the quarry, whether that precluded any kind of heavy trucks on the road, which would include, Mr. Scott's trucks. I don't know how that's possible, that we could preclude other than the quarry trucks on the road, but it seems to raise a question if we don't have staff here.
Well,
to
I mean,
answer.
it is a rural road.
Yes. No,
And
I
there are
understand.
farms on the road, and there is going to be traffic on the road.
But you seem to indicate that part of this agreement included restriction of
Restriction
trucks.
for industrial trucks from the quarries.
So it doesn't have any bearing on Mr. Scott's trucks?
I don't know. That's the question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to go to planning staff, and then I'm going to recognize Mr. Scott. So Mr. Scott, you'll have to come back down if you want to speak on the record. But just over to planning staff, is there anything further you'd like to add?
Through your worship, we can certainly check with the Ministry of Natural Resources if there was any prohibitions or specifications for truck traffic. They would have been through the ministry license or
Right.
through zoning. That would have probably been the process by which they're abiding. Yeah.
That's, would likely be my understanding as well, but obviously it should be subject to confirmation, clearly. Okay, so Mr. Scott, do you want to come back down? There's another mic here if you'd like to use it. Thank you.
And this is actually the first time I've got a map.
Excellent. See, we bring neighbors together in these meetings.
There you go.
All right.
I guess my only thing would be if it's a no truck route, it would be posted. Such as the road like where, after South Gore Drive where you go,
Yes.
like, I don't know what that road's called anymore, but where you go to Mountain Orchard or Dermot O'Farrell's house, like where the quarry is there, and literally if I was to go for business, I used to live in Mountain on Hyman Road, I had to drive all the way out and around 43 Highway to legally get to that quarry or to Willis Curse. So respecting no truck routes is part of our business. And they're posted. This road, if it's not posted, it's not a no truck route. Like maybe to Matt's, what he's saying, maybe it is in an old fashioned agreement, but it's not a no truck route. And if it was, how it would affect me, I don't, as a resident on that road, to this bylaw, I don't think it would, because I can service, I could bring you topsoil, I could bring the rest of the neighbors gravel. If I'm on the road to service the road customers, or if it's like, I can't use it as a sneak through and say I am doing that.
Agreed. That was an exception to the rule that,
And I can appreciate your position. You don't want guys coming from the south and using from Rock to, it would be a shortcut, for sure it would be, so I can appreciate that. That's not my business. We get the odd load of gravel that I'm picking up at GIP for a client and we're going, most of my work is in the city. If we come home to get a load of gravel, it's turn around and go back to wherever. GIP works in Cornwall. Like, we really run that road when we're there empty, and that's also part of the no truck route stuff, is that the heavy trucks are hard on the road, so they will determine roads to be no truck routes to lower the impact. So really in those two cases, and I respect them like I do, if it was becoming a heavy duty truck transit road, it would sure impact my quality of life too. And I would stand with you on arguing that for sure. From my point of view, just my low impact to that and a resident of the road, I feel like if it was, which we don't know, I think it would kind of maybe be a moot point to my thinking anyway. But
So the fact that I have him here right now, is there any way that I can just ask a few questions?
I don't see why not.
Okay,
Carry on.
It's probably not processed, but,
It's all right.
so you have 3 tandems right now,
yeah,
and you have your Copperwood plumbing trucks.
yeah, which go home to guys. Like,
Okay.
there's one, we'll stay there occasionally with the 3 trucks, but one van may rotate. Somebody leaves it there and drives their personal vehicle, but as to your expansion plans, no, there's nothing to expand. I had 4, went to 3, followed the market demand on my business as far as trucks go. As a rule, keep the heavy equipment out of there working, or it's there parking. As far as expanding on my property, I have 0 plans. It's my sanctuary, and that's the way it is. That's how it's kind of been configured. Like, in my house, the shop is over there, the parking's over there. It's neat and tidy, and
Did I hear something about a warehouse, or?
if you did, it was wrong.
Okay.
I have no intention of warehousing anything. I mean, we get our morning delivery from a Noble, a 5-ton cube truck, drops some pipe off and leaves. He's coming from a warehouse, but he's.
Understood.
Somebody maybe called my little 30 by 30 a warehouse, but it's got some steel racking and some bins with ABS pipe and fittings.
That's not a concern.
Yeah.
That's, okay.
Any other conversations you guys need to have?
Probably, but afterwards.
Exactly. Yes, maybe I would invite you to do it over a beverage. All right. Well, you're not the first meeting where neighbors have finally had a chance to interact. So please continue the conversation at your leisure, and hopefully this at least addresses some of your concerns, Mr. McKay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I guess before we close the public meeting, have we exhausted the list of speakers? Oh, okay.
I recall another committee of adjustment
Indeed.
where two residents sat down and discussed things and then
Figured it
said,
out.
what do we need council for?
All right. Oh, if you do have mobility issues, we can grab just once. Okay. Okay. Got you. All right. We have a spectacular AV team, so they're happy to be of service.
Hi, I'm Kim Whitehorn, my husband Doug. We live at 2555 McGovern Road, 2 houses down. And my concern is the noise, the trucks, we have to put up the quarries, and what happens when they get 10 more trucks? Like, who's going to stop them from, building? And it's noisy. It's noisy. So
Yeah,
that's,
I know that Kevin has been clearing some more property. I can hear it with, he's got a hi-ho, and it's a big machine, and it has to be floated in, and if it's part of the rental, then it'll be, people will be renting that hi-ho also. So that, like I say, that's a big truck has to pull that, and a big float has to float it. So it's not just the trucks. If it's contractor equipment, then there's a lot of heavy equipment. You can hear it, because I know there's bedrock up there, and he's trying to clear it for some reason. And like I say, it's just really, really loud, and it's very heavy stuff. And it doesn't get there by itself. So that's just more traffic.
because the idea, this is residential, this is not a commercial area. I mean, it is the quarry, but can we not have some kind of peace? We have to put up with 2 quarries, 365 days a year. And then we got extra noise on the weekends, and it's just not fair. Work's already done. Don't you do that first and then get a change in zoning and then do your work? I don't understand why it's just not fair.
I guess that's about it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. And I guess, again, we'll just defer to staff. Of course, in rural areas of North Granville, we do have a mix of rural sort of slash small commercial among bigger commercials. So why don't you just respond to those last set of comments. We'll invite Mr. Scott to come down one more time, and then I think I'll close the public meeting in the absence of more hands. So, Mr. Mosher, obviously you put consideration into the rezoning in this case and permitting some additional commercial activity.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, the official plan does include, the land is designated as rural, so rural is not the same as rural residential or residential, despite that there are residences around it, and it is a blend. Within the rural official plan designation, limited commercial uses and some industrial uses are contemplated. And so anytime that we look at an application for rezoning, we have to go back to the official plan and to see is the use generally consistent with those policies. And in this case, in our opinion, a limited commercial use in the rural area would be something that is in keeping.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to acknowledge Councillor Strachan and invite Mr. Scott to come on down. You do have to address this. Okay, so let me recognize Councillor Strachan as you're on your way down. Councillor Strachan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you to Deputy Director Mosher. When you talk about limited commercial use, how is that defined? Is it just a general sense of what you feel is limited? Are there upper limits? We're talking about, a few trucks now. Is there a limit as to how many trucks would be no longer acceptable under that limited commercial use scope? I'm just trying to get a sense of where there may be some harder limits placed and might answer some of the concerns from other residents.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Through your worship, it's not a hard and fast test. There's the general consistency policies from the official plan. Some of the things that are mentioned within the official plan include that the use is appropriate and compatible with surrounding land uses, that accesses to the property and to the use are going to be carefully controlled to avoid creating hazards, appropriate screening and buffering, that if there's advertising signage, outdoor storage of goods, that's appropriately controlled, that the use would be placed in separate zoning categories, and then that the development of any commercial use be subject to site plan control, which does provide further rules and regulations around how that property operates. So that is what the policy says in a general sense.
Go ahead.
So as a quick follow-up through you, Madam Mayor, is at this stage, if limited commercial use is allowed under this conversation, there would be there wouldn't necessarily be any trigger to have the conversation come back to say, well, now you've exceeded that, or that would require complaints from residents? What would be the trigger that would say you've now exceeded this and there would have to follow up with another level of review?
Through your worship. So somebody did mention warehouse, for instance. So that's a separate and distinct use from what's being discussed tonight. So if Mr. Scott wanted to add that, he would request an additional and separate zoning amendment to add in an additional use like that. In terms of tools that you could use a spot zoning tool. That's something that has been used in the past, and it would say, despite the fact that the majority of the property is rural zoned, this area is zoned for the commercial use. And so you could control it that way, and there'd be some physical parameters on the use. It gets I think that's the kind of thinking outside the box solution to it, because number of trucks and things of that nature are not traditionally specified within a zoning bylaw. That's kind of outside the scope of what a zone bylaw would do.
All right.
One other quick follow-up through Madam Mayor. Currently, the space that Mr. Scott is limited to is the front part of the property, basically, where it's already been disturbed land, I think is how you defined it. That would be the limits at this stage that he would be confined to? Is that correct?
At this point in time, Mr. Scott has requested the entire property to have this exception, so that wouldn't confine it to the limits of that disturbed area. So if he was agreeable to that and council was open to that and that provided some sort of a way forward for residents, you could say, no, it's going to be limited to this specific physical area on the ground.
Okay. Thank you very much. Just for clarification, Mr. Scott, I'm not necessarily opposed to what you're suggesting here. I'm just trying to play out some of these other scenarios based on the questions that are coming from residents. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Scott, back over to you.
I guess just to respond to the comments about what I've done with heavy equipment, but whether I own a business that has a piece of heavy equipment in my toolbox or I don't, I'm a homeowner, I'm a landowner, and I have 3,000 feet of perimeter that I can't walk around. And that's what my goal is, to have 3,000 feet of my perimeter, that's my property, cleared, so that I can enjoy it, whether it's snowshoeing, snowmobiling with my kids, recreational use, like it's 20 acres, it's a lot of land, and I want to be able to actually enjoy it. So whether or not I am allowed by a bylaw to have that piece of equipment there working to please the owner, who has, it could be me or it could be anybody else, like that, what I'm doing back there is for my personal use. It is not a commercial enterprise. I'm clearing my perimeter, which to everybody on the east side of this road that has property, they've been there a long time. They have established paths. I'm just getting to this overgrown 20 acres. There's nothing woodlandy about it. It's an overgrown Christmas tree farm. The whole place, it's all Scotch pines. They're all whatever you call it. They're all fragile, and ice storm damage is coming steady. My majority of my property is cedar and slash and nothing that grows. It's bedrock, as one neighbor pointed out, but I'm not back there blasting. I'm not making a mini quarry. I am clearing the perimeter, and it's happening right now, like live time. We're doing it this week. I've cleared a perimeter nearly all the way around, and it's for my winter enjoyment, so my kids I don't have to spend $250 for them to go ride a trail. Where they go, I don't know where. They can ride all day long in my backyard. It's really just for personal, and that doesn't matter if I have my zoning bylaw amendment or not. That part still, because I'm just a regular homeowner. You know, at that moment, what's happening is just a regular neighbor on the road. If somebody doesn't like that and it's a noise complaint, then by all means, it's a noise bylaw. But that part has nothing to do with my business, like zero. And really, the complaints about noise at all hours and 24/7 and 365, that's not my property that's making that noise. There's property up and down that road that things happen. There's farm fields next to me that's owned by GIP, which I don't know if anybody in the room knows, but like, I'm not the big bad wolf on this road or on the east side of the road, the north side. Like, no one is. People have kind of lumping me in with that. And I can respect their unknown and the fear of what's to come. But this does not open them up to a quarry in the backyard. And that's not at all what I want. Like, it's just having having a parking lot for 3 dump trucks at this moment. That's all that's there. I had 4, I reduced, as I said, like, there's no signals and there's no thought in my head that anything is going beyond my sanctuary in the back and my business there. It's kind of like the perfect scenario where for a small business to have everything in one spot. And most people in my position would seek out rural properties to achieve that goal. And when I found this property online, that's exactly what it achieved. It took me out of renting a spot in town. It took me out of parking my vehicles off site where I didn't have eyes on them. It's exactly what was the perfect scenario. So that's where this is led.
Okay, thank you so much for that additional context. Thank you. All right, we're going to move to close the public meeting, but I do see one more hand, so you'll have to get a mic to you or come down and speak at the mic. And then I think we've exhausted our list of speakers, more or less. All right, do I see any other hands? Okay. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Mary Pat McKay, 2589 McGovern Road. So I have a couple of questions. The first one goes to Mr. Mosher. When you read out the limits for notifying neighbors, you admitted we live in a rural township. I don't know of anybody who has less than 2-acre lot on that road. So I think you need to amend your bylaw to say that you notify the people who are neighbors on that road. That is like, we are on the corner of Irish Town and McGovern, and finding out last night that this meeting was taking place, and I agree, it was probably available online. I don't look on the municipality website unless I'm angry about something. So, you know, if you consider that a win for you guys. I think that needs to be amended. The other part that I have a disagreement with was when you did your presentation and you said that this is predominantly swampland, was what it was presented like, swampland, and a bit of mixed rural. It is a residential road. I've been there 30 years. I know all my neighbors, except now I've met Kevin. I knew of Kevin before. My other issue is, if Kevin is applying for rezoning for his entire property, and he does have a hi-ho on his property to clear his land, I have no issue with that for personal use, then I think his bylaw should reduce the amount of available property that he rezones. He doesn't need his entire property to be rezoned. He needs a portion of his property to be rezoned. That would make me very happy as a resident and a neighbor, knowing that in the future, my daughter lives across the street, she's here, she'll have children and hopefully someday. I don't have to worry about her kids and having 20 trucks coming out of his business in the future, as opposed to the 4 that he had or 3 that he has now. So would that be a consideration, putting a limit on the amount of space that he has for his rezoning?
So we'll take that up with staff. If you conclude your comments, then is there anything else you'd like to put on the record?
My husband alluded to the fact that he doesn't notice the truck traffic as much, but I walk my dogs every day, twice a day. I'm up before 6. I do it again in the afternoon. I'm home on lots of days off during the weeks. I notice there's been a huge increase in truck traffic. I don't have as big an issue with the volume other than their speed. They don't slow down. They come down that road. They don't stop. Most of us don't because it's a dead-end road. We kind of curve, but let's do a slow rolling stop at least if you're not going to stop completely. So I realize that he speaks to his drivers. I think that needs to be a regular, everyday occurrence then, because it's not happening that they're slowing down. So, anyways, that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And certainly we have speed monitoring devices that might be very valuable for all the truck traffic, not specific to one commercial property, that would help cue drivers. And we often hear that cars often speed as well, so it's not specific necessarily to just trucks. It can be many different drivers who are guilty of speeding on rural roads, there's no doubt. So, Mr. Mosher, over to you.
Through your worship. Thank you for the comments, Mrs. McKay. In terms of notification, it's not Phil Mosher's plan or design, it's the provincial regulation. So I can't take any credit for it. It's what's required through law. So there's, until the province makes moves to change that, there's nothing staff can do about it. I didn't mean to be derogatory in terms of swampland, and I apologize if it was received that way. It's intended more of just a general statement, because we know that it's a provincially significant wetland on the south side, and we know that it's a portion of treed swamp. So I apologize for using some common vernacular. That's I meant no disrespect. Yeah, I understand it's very much a residential area to folks that live there. So again, I meant no disrespect in that regard. That's all I wanted to say.
In terms of Ms. McKay's question on a partial or a rezoning of not all the land, but some of the lands?
Yes, through your worship, that's certainly something that could be considered. Again, to my knowledge, the request that's been submitted by Mr. Scott is for one of rezoning the property. So I think there'd have to be some further discussion on if that's an acceptable solution for himself.
Mr. Scott, are you open to that, or is it your desire to see the whole property rezoned? All right. Yep. Okay. All right, so the recommendation as written right now is to rezone the whole property. This is to approve a zoning bylaw amendment application, ZBA 0523 for the lands known municipally as 2509 McGovern Road. So to amend the zoning from rural to rural special exception to permit the establishment of a contractor's yard. So, council colleagues, it's really at your discretion if you want to look to defer or to adopt as recommended, or to potentially pursue an additional modification. Deputy Mayor.
I would ask the question maybe of the clerk or Mr. Mosher. Would it be possible to amend this recommendation to approve it pending a section rezone?
Conditional on a section.
You know, or at a later date, could we amend the motion on the table and just get some action on it with a discussion to happen at a future date about what section is this zoning amendment applies to? I don't know if I've made myself clear, but.
We're going to, unfortunately, that sort of conversation has to happen sort of offline. Certainly, yes. Perhaps, certainly. In any case, let's ask Mr. Mosher to answer the question that Deputy Mayor has posed. Mr. Mosher, Ms. Martin?
Through your worship, my recommendation is not to kind of ad hoc it or on the fly, and even if it takes additional time, my recommendation would be to defer in order that that information can be properly communicated. And I understand that that's maybe not the most desired thing, but I think it's the proper thing at this time. And we have some other questions that we need to follow up on in terms of truck routes from the ministry, and I know that they may be minor matters, but there's some additional information we need, so I think that would be the proper way to proceed.
All right, so you're changing your recommendation at this point to a deferral?
Yes.
Okay, so with that in mind, can you give us any insight of how long that deferral would take?
It would probably take us about a couple of weeks to discuss with Mr. Scott, and then we'd want to reach out to some neighbors as well as the ministry and continue forward.
And you would bring it back at the next planning meeting in November?
We would aim to, yes.
Okay. So, colleagues, with that, there's a motion to defer. I will look, I apologize, it's not a motion, it's a recommendation. There's a recommendation to defer. Of course, at your discretion, we can go in either direction. We can proceed with the recommendation as presented, or defer as more recently recommended. So I'll look to a mover and a seconder for either option. Councillor Strachan.
To select one of the options?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I move to defer.
Okay. So I'll look for a seconder to defer. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I know we have Councillor Sullivan listening online. I don't know if Councillor O'Sullivan wishes to read anything into the record. She does say that Wellington Road is entirely residential and trucking is allowed, certainly more than 6 trucks a day. Council did not consider making Wellington Road a truck route. So I think what she's trying to convey is obviously many residential roads throughout North Grenville that are not truck routes. But thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I know you're working hard to stream this meeting off-site, so we appreciate your continued engagement. So we have a mover and a seconder for a deferral and a commitment from staff to bring this back. Again, I know considerable work has been done with Mr. Scott to certainly advance some of the considerations for rezoning. So out of respect for both parties, if you will, we look forward to seeing some additional information. And I will look for a final comment from council colleagues. Seeing, Deputy Mayor.
I'm just curious about the one resident who responded in favor, whether we have that email handy to see what Mr. Johnson.
Through your worship, in fact, we do.
Okay, so maybe just read it into the record?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
My name is Peter Johnson. I live at 2510 McGovern Road West, Oxford Mills. My property is directly across from 2509 McGovern Road. My house is likely as closer than any others to the property in question, specifically the area where the trucks are parked and from which they leave and return each day. Mr. Scott's business operations have not been a disturbance at all. In fact, compared to the noise from the quarries, the impact of his operations has been minimal. I would make a complaint about the noise from the quarries that I have had to endure since they started almost 25 years ago, but the municipality in its wisdom has exempted all quarries from the noise bylaw restrictions. Thanks for that. We were here 30 years before they arrived, but that doesn't matter. Since moving in, Mr. Scott has gone to great expense in effort to improve his property. In addition, he has instructed his drivers to drive quietly and carefully when they are on McGovern Road, and they do. He's done everything he can to have as little impact as possible on the residents of McGovern Road. I wish the same could be said for the quarries. I believe that the complaint against him is frivolous and unnecessary. His application for exemption should be approved. His property should be amended to designate it as a contractor's yard. He is a small business owner who is providing employment for many employees. Requiring him to move trucks elsewhere is an expense that just might cost these people their jobs. Just because a neighbor felt obligated to complain about a zoning bylaw infringement, that is ridiculous. The Department of Planning and Development needs to do everything possible to assist small businesses to help them thrive. Also, I wish to attend the meeting and to be notified of the decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. That sheds a different light on things, I think.
So, colleagues, we have a motion to defer on the table. That's what's before us right now. I'll recognize Councillor Strachan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think I'd just like to add a comment. I don't know if Mr. Scott is going to watch this video, but the deferral doesn't mean that we are against the idea of a contractor's yard, simply to place some reasonable limits on it. And the discussion about the amount of the property that should be designated as a contractor's yard, I think is a reasonable discussion, in addition to getting some of those additional questions answered so that there is resolution to this matter. And once and for all, once a decision is made, everybody knows where we stand. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a deferral on the table. I just, administratively, I need to ask our clerk. Of course, Councillor Sullivan is streaming the meeting. She is asking if she can vote. Ms. Preston, yes or no?
Because she's not connected, I'm going to say no.
Okay. She's not connected, but she's streaming the meeting, and you're making that distinction.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so Councillor Sullivan, thank you. Councillor Sullivan does wish to say that she does not support the deferral. She agrees with Mr. Johnson. It's with obviously regret that we can't consider Councillor Sullivan's vote tonight for or against. She's working hard to be a participant in the meeting, and we look forward to better technology which will allow us to fully have council colleagues who aren't in the room able to participate and cast their vote accordingly. But at this stage, I'm going to call the vote on the motion to defer. I would only say, as much as I appreciate all of the concerns read tonight, and certainly articulated tonight, I'm extremely hopeful that we can bring this back and offer assurances to those in the room, but also enable Mr. Scott to move forward for the reasons that have been expressed. So, calling the question on the deferral. Colleagues, all in favor? All in favor. So we have two. Deputy Mayor, are you voting? You're not voting for? Okay. And then, we'll call voting against. Okay. Right. We don't have quorum on the deferral. Okay. So what do we do now?
With respect, we would need 3. It could leave it in limbo, which would de facto make it a deferral.
Okay. So then it is effectively deferred. Is that right? Okay. So it passes. Okay. Thank you, colleagues. We're going to take a short break. We know we have another public meeting. So thank you, everyone, for your time.
I had my hand up for you to over here.
Listen, I didn't recognize your hand. I apologize. I couldn't see it.
Through you, Your Worship, I know it's too late to say this, but I would like to have had a recorded vote.
Okay, thank you. We'll learn for next time. I think you do have to ask before. Yes, that's correct.
In accordance with the procedure bylaw.
Okay. We're going to take 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, so that's really remarkable. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Thank you to those who are remaining for their patience. Public meetings are about dialogue, compromise, and hopefully in the end positive resolution, so we look forward to that happening. I've already read the public notice script for the next proposed rezoning, and that is in regards to Prosperity Holdings, and I believe I'm asking Ms. Martin to take us through that one. And I guess I should ask, is there anyone here for this particular application? I believe the applicants are here, applicants, plural. And is there anyone else here for this public meeting? Scanning the room, I don't see anyone. That might make it a little bit faster. So over to you, Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll just wait for the slide deck to come up. We'll just move to the next slide. Oh. There is no civic address for the property, so I did my best to describe it. So it's the southwest corner of Van Buren and Kingdom Road as highlighted on the attached map. And we'll go to the next slide, please. There is an aerial photograph of the map. As you can see, it is a vegetated lot. I will note that it is located within our urban area of the town of Kemptville. Next slide, please. So the official plan designation of the property is economic enterprise. So it is within our urban boundary of the town of Kemptville. The current zoning of the property is rural, and the proposed zoning of the property would be business enterprise or C5. So that would mirror the official plan designation of economic enterprise in regards to the intended uses of the property. The land is 8 acres in size, and it's currently a vacant lot, and the surrounding land uses include vacant, commercial, industrial, and there is a religious institution just down the road on Kingdom Road. So when considering a Planning Act application, we have to have regard for our various policy documents, starting with the provincial policy statement, which provides planning policy direction at the provincial level. So section 1.3 of the provincial policy statement provides economic development policies, and these are encouraged by providing an appropriate mix and range of employment, institutional, and broader uses, and providing opportunities for a diversified economic base. We'll go to the next slide. Under the United Counties official plan, which provides planning direction at the regional level here, section 2.6 of the official plan requires municipalities to designate and protect employment areas and provide for an appropriate range and mix of economic development opportunities. So it is important to note that under the county's official plan, these lands are designated as being regionally significant employment areas. So this is an area where we want to see the establishment of a commercial and employment type uses. Next slide, please. Going down to the granular level at the municipal official plan, we do have policies, again, that speaks to the intent of designating and protecting lands for economic purposes, including a mix of highway, commercial, industrial, and service commercial uses. We also have commercial development policies within our economic development lands that permit commercial uses that are compatible with the surrounding area where it can be appropriately serviced. Next slide, please. So this is just a concept of the property. It's not the be-all and end-all final design. The intent of the rezoning would be to establish that economic enterprise variety of uses, which does include commercial uses, such as a recreational club, and it is the intent within the first phase of the development to establish a recreational club, bringing together a couple recreational facilities that currently operate within the municipality of North Grenville, with a potential future second phase for more commercial uses on the property. It's important to note that site plan control will be required at such a time that the property does come forward with a development application, but currently the request is to add and appropriately zone the property to the C5 use so it reflects the official plan policies. Next slide, please. We did not receive any comments prior to the submission of the planning report, and up to this meeting, we did have just one inquiry in regards to some of the reports that were provided. I will note that an environmental impact study was provided as part of the submission, as well as a planning rationale, and as part of the environmental impact study, it did identify some wetlands on the property, but identified that they were not significant enough in size to be evaluated. So at this time, it is staff's recommendation that council support the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the lands from rural to business enterprise.
Excellent. Thank you. Any questions, colleagues? Deputy Mayor? Go ahead.
An exciting project. I just have a question about the status of a concept plan. Now, I understand they're just looking for a zoning bylaw amendment, and that later they'll come with what is called a site plan. But is there any restriction, or does it have any weight, the concept plan, other than just informing their intent for the property?
Thank you, through your worship, to the Deputy Mayor. So the concept plan in general just establishes what the property could be developed as. So in regards to holding them to that final design, through the site plan process, site design can and may change from what may originally been proposed. The zoning bylaw does dictate setbacks and those requirements. So at such a time, should they come forward and not be in compliance with the zone standards for the C5 zone, they would have to come back with another planning application to address those matters. But in regards to the zoning, the concept plan, it wouldn't hold any weight. It does happen where there's an original proposal, events happen and something new comes forward. But today they're just looking to establish the uses so that it conforms with the official plan.
Thank you.
Are there any residential properties in the vicinity? In terms of notification provisions, who effectively would surround that property? Who would have been covered?
I believe there may be one residence, Your Worship, within the area, but the majority of the land is vacant, some of which is already zoned for commercial or institutional uses, as well as the religious institution. So any properties within 120 meters of the site, which would effectively cover a majority of the lands within the area, there are larger land holdings, would have received notice. I don't have the list in front of me as to exactly which properties received notice, but I can confirm that notification was given in accordance with the Planning Act.
And would most properties in that vicinity have the business enterprise zoning? I know it's an area of, it's declared an economic development zone, but what would be the zoning provisions of neighboring properties?
Thank you, Your Worship. So some of the properties still hold the rural zoning. There are some properties within the vicinity that already have that business enterprise zoning, and I believe there may be an industrial property in there as well. There is a highway commercial zoning with Spa Jada not too far away that recognizes those types of uses. So what we are seeing from a trending perspective is as properties come forward from a zoning perspective, we are changing the zoning of those lands to be more reflective of the official plan designation.
Given the intended use, Ms. Martin, would you see a situation arise of incompatibility?
Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, no, based on what the proposed uses are. These lands, again, are identified for economic enterprise, so a residential use within that area is typically not contemplated within the economic enterprise designation or in our commercial areas. We try to reserve those areas for this type of development to mitigate and avoid those negative impacts.
And finally, could someone purchase a property in this vicinity and declare it exclusively for residential use?
Thank you, Your Worship, for the question. It would depend on the current zoning of the property. So if there was a property that was zoned rural, which does allow for a single detached dwelling, they could establish such a use because the zoning does permit it. But if the zoning of the majority of the area is whether it's highway, commercial, industrial, or business enterprise, a single detached residence is not a permitted use. So it would preclude that from being established, but we'd have to consider that on a case-by-case basis based on what that individual property is zoned as.
Okay, that's helpful. Maybe lastly, the condition of the road, that section of Town Line Road I know has been assessed for multiple different uses. How would you assess the condition of the road currently? That would service this property. Would the entrance be a County Road 43 entrance or a or an alternate route into the property?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the preference would be, so the property does not have access onto County Road 43.
Right.
But in circulation and discussions with the counties, where there is the ability to have access off of a township road versus a county road, that is the preference. So it's typically that would be detailed at the site plan stage, where we would have those discussions as to where an appropriate entrance would be. And in this case, the concept drawing does show an entrance coming off of Kingdom Road. The application was circulated to Public Works. However, we did not receive any comments in regards to the state of the road. And as part of site plan submission, there very well may be a requirement to do a traffic impact study. Again, that would be more so on the impacts to the county road, just given where the access is.
Okay, great. Any other questions, colleagues? So knowing a little bit around the intentions for this particular property, which I believe are very exciting and will draw a lot of different users from North Granville and beyond, young families, older residents, and everyone in between. I just want to ensure that road safety is adequately contemplated because I know at South Gore Drive and County Road 43, that harrowing intersection of 43 and 22 wasn't fun for a lot of families and others to navigate, and it took many, many years to implement, in my opinion, adequate intersection control, obviously a roundabout. So as this area becomes busier, I'm curious to know how we'll contemplate additional road safety measures, because 43 is already very, very busy. Of course, Kingdom Road isn't at this stage, but with time, I'm sure it will emerge as a topic. So I look forward to more discussions with Public Works so we can keep it on our radar screen. Okay, seeing nothing else, colleagues, their recommendation, unless it's changing, which I don't believe it is that Council approve and enact bylaw 9623, being a bylaw to rezone the lands known as Concession 6, part of Lot 12 being Part 7 and 9 on Reference Plan 15R9062, Geographic Township of South Gore from rural to business enterprise. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder then. Councillor Strachan, Deputy Mayor, thank you very much. And again, I just want to confirm, would the applicant wish to speak? I apologize, I didn't invite you to do so. Is there any wish for that this evening? Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you. And I know this has been a long time coming and tremendous effort and time has been put into this. So appreciate all of your energy and your vision and your leadership. So look forward to the next steps, presuming all goes well. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Good. Thank you. That carries. Congratulations. All right. Well done. You waited a little bit longer. I guess we could have flipped those. We didn't know. We didn't know. We really didn't know. Okay. So with that, we're going to conclude our meeting. Correspondence we've already dealt with, Ms. Preston. Other business, is there any other business this evening? Not seeing any. Notice of motions, colleagues, any notice of motions? Not seeing any. Introduction and consideration of bylaws, I believe we've done that, Ms. Preston. All right. Any questions from media or members of the public? Jen, you're good. Long day. You've done your best. Thank you. Jen Wessendorp, our intrepid local reporter. We very much appreciate that she attends all of our meetings. Thank you. Among many other community events, not just meetings. Thank you. So we'll go to close the meeting then, and that is confirmation bylaw, that bylaw 9723 to confirm proceedings of council on October 11th be adopted and passed. Mover, Councillor Wilson, seconder, thank you. I'll call a question. Are we confirming proceedings? Yes, we are. And then finally, motion to adjourn at 8:26. We're meeting your deadline. So, we work to please. 8:26, mover and seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, I'm going to acknowledge Councillor Wilson because I've overlooked her this evening. I really apologize, Councillor Wilson. It's the height issue. We're going to get rid of these screens with the new technology. Oh yeah, we should really be flipping you. Yes. All right, we will caucus about that after. But many new technological innovations were going to be upon us very soon, and we'll thank Councillor O'Sullivan for doing her absolute best to be a full participant tonight. I'm calling the question. 8:26. All in favor? Good. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.